This is Comic Shenanigans, episode 1084, a conversation with Scott Dunbier.
Ain't no stopping them shenanigans. Love getting into shenanigans. All up in them shenanigans. 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 Shenanigans.
Welcome to the Comic Shenanigans podcast. I'm your host, Adam Chapman. This is episode 1084. It's a conversation with Scott Dunbier. Scott has been on the show a few times in the past. You can check out his previous appearances on episode 762 back from March 2020, as well as episode 972 from May 2022. So it's been just about 3 years since we last spoke to Scott on the show. A lot's happened. He left IDW, created his own company, which is Act 4 Publishing, and today we talk about his upcoming releases, working on, the artist editions, what it's like to have his own company, and what kind of led to this fourth act in terms of his career. So this was a lot of fun. It's always fun to talk to Scott, pick his brain about what's coming up in the artist editions program. Obviously now it's not with IDW. Now he's working on books himself, but we talk about what's coming out this year, and really kind of get into it and nuts and bolts. So this was a lot of fun. It's always fun to have Scott on the show, and I hope you enjoy it. And again, you can also check out those back episodes just to listen to Scott's previous appearances on the show. Upcoming episodes include a Book of the Month Club, where we talk about Daredevil Batman, the crossover one-shot from the 90s by D.G. Chichester and Scott McDaniel. We also talk about the more recent miniseries, Daredevil Black Armor, also by D.G. Chichester, but this time with a new artist, and I think it was Netho Diaz. So that's a fun upcoming conversation. We're also going to have D.G. Chichester back on the show to talk about those two books in particular. So first you listen to us talk about the book, and then you're going to hear the actual creator talk about the book the following week. We also have an upcoming episode with someone new to the show, which I won't say too much until we've confirmed his appearance, but someone new to the show who's written something I've really enjoyed over the past year and a half, kind of a surprise hit for me, a book that I was like, oh, that looks like it could be fun, and it's actually been really enjoyable, and it just had a trade paperback come out, and that's about as much as I'll say about it at the moment. It was some good stuff coming up, and then as we go ramp into April, not really sure what we're going to be having on the show yet. I got to reach out to some people just about confirming interviews for April, but I'm sure it'll be good stuff. So thanks for listening to me ramble on, and let's jump right into the conversation with Scott. Enjoy. But I should probably take care of some housekeeping business first. You can always email me at comicshenanigans@gmail.com, rate the show on Apple Podcasts, listen to us on Apple Podcasts, and also listen to us on Spotify. Thanks again. Enjoy the episode. Scott, welcome back to the Comic Shenanigans podcast. How are you today?
I'm good, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. This is your third time on the show. It's been about 3 years. Nothing major's happened in that time, right? You've just started your own company.
Everything is completely status quo.
So I want to go back. So first of all, one thing we had talked about 3 years ago, I think there was a listener question about, could there ever be a Batman Year One artist edition? And you had a very interesting, in hindsight, kind of mum comment. What was it like working on that book?
It was, definitely one of the bucket list books for me. I've been trying to do that book since I did Daredevil Born Again Artist Edition. And, it's interesting because the Daredevil Born Again book was, a very straightforward experience. David was pretty much hands-off. I worked on the book with my designer, Randy Dalk, and he put the book together. I was very happy with how it came out. I sent the PDF, as I normally do, to the creator, and David sent me back an email, a very nice email, said he was very happy with it, and that was it. The experience on Batman Year One was polar opposite. Not to say that he wasn't happy with it, he was very happy with it. But first, we had a different designer. David asked me if we could get Chip Kidd, legendary designer, and I said, if Chip is up for it, I'm certainly up for it. So I reached out to Chip, and he was pretty over the moon about it. And then from there, we went kind of in an unusual direction, and that was, I told David that I would do whatever would make him happy. And he definitely took advantage of that. Not advantage of it, but he, it is the book that he wanted to make. So what you see is a combination of David and Chip and, me a little bit. But, it was a great experience. I'm really, really happy with how it came out. And, people seem to like it.
Was it weird? Like, at what point working on that? Because I believe it came out, I think, just after you'd left or while you were, like, in the process of leaving. So where were you mentally in the process of leaving the company while you're working on this project?
Well, the book was approved to print several months before I left. And then it came out several months after I left. So, I left, my last day was April 5th. And it came out in July, I believe, and I think I approved it in January. The book was done, so there wasn't any issue for me.
Now, once it was actually like finalized in your hands, like, would you put that up with some of the best work you've done in terms of the artist editions, or can you even choose favorites because they're all kind of your children?
It is sort of difficult, but a book like that, it's special. It's definitely one of my favorites. But I have a lot of favorites.
Mm-hmm. No, how long had you been percolating the idea that you might leave at some point? And actually, at that point, did you know that you were going to definitely do something else, and that would end up becoming Act 4, or were you just thinking that you were going to move on? Like, what was the process in your mind? Because obviously, you've been involved in the industry in a long time. You've been working on all these projects. So I'm just curious what the mental arithmetic was, or what your heart was feeling as you kind of ended that stage of your career.
It's kind of funny. I haven't had a lot of jobs in my life. I worked at Wildstorm for, 13 years, 14 years, and I worked at IDW for, 16 years. I gave my notice just before my 16th anniversary, and I left just after my 16th anniversary. It's always, it's always tough for me to make a major change like that. But, it was time. I have great respect for IDW. I had a wonderful time working there, especially, going back to Ted Adams when he hired me. Ted was, I count two people in my career as having the most impact on it. Jim Lee, when he hired me to come out to San Diego to work for Wildstorm, and then Ted when he hired me at IDW. Both Jim and Ted gave me a lot of latitude. They gave me a lot of freedom to do what I wanted, and they were great bosses. IDW over the years changed a bit. We had some disagreements, and so I felt it was time to try something new. And I figure, I'm not a kid anymore, so to me, if I'm going to start my own company, I better goddamn do it.
How quick or easy was it for you to come up with a name?
I think I'm pretty good at coming up with names, and This one, resonated with me. Because I basically looked at it as my first act was art dealing, my second act was Wildstorm, my third act was IDW, and now I'm in my fourth act. And I was very lucky. I had a good friend who I asked him if he would design my logo, and he said yes. That was Chip Kidd. You can't really go wrong with Chip. And he really did a very thoughtful logo. If you look at it, it's very specific. It's sort of, it goes from blurry to less blurry to a little bit less blurry, and then to clarity. And I loved it. And so yeah.
What was so? You announced. I think you announced at Comic-Con, didn't you, that you were starting this up?
I announced it before Comic-Con, a couple of months before, but I showed my first books, the very first books that I was going to be doing at Comic-Con.
Now, I'm curious obviously you were operating before with the artifice of IDW, so now you're on your own, but obviously you've established, everyone kind of knows that you were the engine behind the artist editions. So what was it like for you to kind of sit down and be like, okay, well, what do I want to do? Because you don't have a corporate overlord anymore. Now it's, what do you want to do that you think will sell?
I think that I have good taste, and so I just have to follow my own barometer to figure out what it is that I want to do. A lot of the books that I'm going to be doing are the same types of books. I'm doing artist editions, and I have some real nice ones lined up for the next few years. And then I'll be doing some new comics. Walter Simonson is going to continue to do Ragnarok with me. Walter has been sort of a hero of mine since I was, 10 years old. And I've been lucky enough to not only work with him for a long time, but also to call him a good friend. And then, it's honestly, the only thing that binds the books together besides me is trying to just make quality books, and saying that sounds a little bit pretentious, but, I have great respect for the art form. I have great respect for the kinds of books that showcase it. And so, I'm doing what I love.
Now, perusing Act 4's website, it's interesting, and I want to understand the distinction. You have some of the listings are, for artist editions, and others are connoisseur editions. I'm curious, what is the distinction?
A connoisseur edition is, first I tried to find the most pretentious name I could, but a connoisseur edition is a collection of comics and of different things, whereas an artist edition is purely shooting original art, scanning the pages in color, the covers in color, and then presenting them as they are. A connoisseur edition, the first one is going to be the complete Darwin Cook Spirit, and that will be an oversized collection that will feature all of Darwin's spirit work. He did 11 issues, 1 through 6 and 8 through 12, plus the Batman Spirit crossover, which I was able to get licensed from DC. It'll be a big, beautiful book. It's going to be modeled basically after the Martini editions that I did at IDW. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be 9.5 inches by 13 inches in a slipcase. It'll be 324 pages, and it'll be the first time that Darwin's spirit work has been collected in one volume.
Wow. Well, now, you said this is kind of like one of the first things that you're putting out. Was that an easy kind of first choice for you, or were you kind of throwing darts at a board? Because obviously you have a great lineup of upcoming books.
Thank you. No, I have tremendous respect for Darwin. He was one of my closest friends. We had a lot of fun working together. We certainly had hiccups along the way. But Darwin was a great guy and a tremendous talent. He's somebody that I think about a lot and that I miss a lot. It wasn't tough. It wasn't tough to make that one of the first books. And then after that, moving forward, I'm going to take a little bit of a break until the new year. These first two books are coming out in September and October. Mm-hmm. And then my next book after that will be I think I'll hold off until a little bit longer to announce what the next books are going to be. But there'll be some very nice, surprising, I think really cool things that'll be coming up in February, March, April, May of next year.
Sounds great. One of the things I was interested in looking at your website, just because obviously you usually go with not necessarily like non-modern, but you have gone with older material in the past, etc. So I was really interested to see Danger Girl getting an artist edition from J. Scott Campbell, which I would imagine his pencils are gorgeous. I'm curious what was percolating in your mind that kind of led you to developing this as an artist edition.
Well, I was the original editor on Danger Girl, and it actually, it may seem modern, but Danger Girl came out nearly 30 years ago.
I guess I'm dating ourselves, right? It feels really modern to me, but you're right.
Well, I remember when I was 12 years old, I woke up and I was going to school, and on the radio, I'm getting ready, and the DJ says, today is the 30th anniversary of the end of World War II. And I remember thinking, wow, that's a long time ago. And, it doesn't seem, that 30 years doesn't seem so long anymore. But, like I said, I was the editor on Danger Girl, and Jeff Campbell, he's an interesting artist because he gets, I think, a raw deal from a lot of people. People kind of discount him. He, of course, is a great pinup artist. He does beautiful covers with women, and he's sort of known for that right now. But if you go back and you look at something like Danger Girl in particular, he is a great storyteller. It's funny because his main influences are people like Mort Drucker and Disney animation. And especially on Disney animation, you can really see that in his work. At least I can. And actually, I'll tell you a funny story. The first time I ever saw Jeff's work, I was living in New York before I went out to work for Jim Lee at Wildstorm. And Jim and I have been friends for a very long time, close to 40 years now. And Jim used to send me faxes, because this is before computers and the internet. Jimmy used to send me faxes of art, from the studio. And he said, I got this new guy. He's incredible. I got to send it to you. And so he sent me some of Jeff's work. And when I say Jeff, it's J. Scott Campbell, of course. But most people call him Scott, but, I know him as Jeff. When I got the fax, I called Jim back and I said, man, I do not know what you see in this guy. And Jeff always got a kick out of that. But, he was very raw. But, luckily Jim saw something in him that I didn't. But, he grew as an artist, and he just became a tremendous talent. So doing Danger Girl, seems totally appropriate to me. And I've also done newer stuff. I mean, I've done 2 books with Chris Somney.
Of course.
There are plenty of artists that are out there who do amazing work. And, I'd be totally open to doing work with creators who are more modern than that.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to jump around for a second. Obviously, last month, there was the news came out about Skybound's going to be the ones actually kind of assisting with the publication of your volumes. What was that discussion like, and what was it like kind of signing on with Skybound?
Wait, did we announce that? Oh, my God.
It's on your on your website that you're partnering with Skybound. I think that's public knowledge.
So, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. I was talking to a bunch of people, and the folks at Skybound were very generous and gracious. I was talking with Image, and Eric Stevenson suggested that I actually speak to the Skybound folks, and so he put us in touch with each other, and we had a bunch of meetings, and it all fell into place. It felt like a natural thing. They basically agreed to nearly everything I asked for, and I'm excited to work there. They've got a machine there, they in the best possible way. They lend a lot of help and expertise in what they do, and it makes my life a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. I have a question, and then this is a more of a timely one, and so hopefully at some point this will seem like such a quaint question, but obviously grounding our discussion in today, which is March 4th, we obviously now know that there's going to be a tariff situation and a trade war between Canada and the U.S., and obviously also with China. I'm curious, like where do these books usually get printed, and do you foresee many issues with that being, with the future publication of these books?
Yeah, and at this time I would ask anyone listening to make sure they vote in the midterms next year, or in 2 years. It definitely plays a part in it. Yesterday it was announced that there would be higher tariffs on the books coming out of China. My books are generally printed in China, so it is a concern. I am exploring other printing options, but it's a drag.
No, for sure. Because a lot of like what I've read around the industry is that obviously a lot of people go to China obviously because it is cheaper, but also they're able to handle some of the types of books and or have the facilities to handle these bigger, more marquee books as well, which is why a lot of people have gone there. So I'm hoping against hope that this stuff doesn't go on too long, because I don't relish what it could do to the publishing industry in general.
Yeah, I mean, what's going on with Canada for definitely even worse. But I'm hoping that that this can be resolved somehow to enable tariff lifted. It's definitely a concern that makes, especially for a new publisher, it makes it more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that the books that I do will be hopefully well received, and hopefully make enough to so I can continue doing them, and also pay my mortgage.
that would be helpful too, right?
Yeah.
I want to ask about, you're doing the Wallywood EC Stories Artist Edition expanded version. So what is new and what can people look forward to in this expanded edition?
Well, I had previously announced that I was going to include 3 news stories in it. As it turns out, I spoke too soon. There will not be 3 news stories. There will be 10.
Oh, wow.
So it just kind of grew and grew. I kept on finding more material, and Wallywood to me is one of the greatest cartoonists of all time. He, when you think about how much great work he did so young, and how young he died. He was in his early 50s when he died. And, he really is sort of like, the Paul McCartney of the cartooning community to me. He was just brilliant, just did amazing stuff. And, the first book, the first printings were fantastic, a lot of great material, some of his best stories. And I've been very lucky and have been able to find another 10 stories, and some really, really great ones.
You said before that at times it's almost easier than you'd expect to find some of this kind of 50 stuff, because with the shorter stories, obviously there's less pages you have to track down, and more likely they might be clumped together. Was that still true for this additional 10?
Well, yeah. They were all together. None of them were pieced together. The great thing about EC Stories is, they were all between 6 and 8 pages. And if you're going to buy a 20-page story, that's a much bigger investment, a bigger commitment if you're a collector. And a lot of those longer stories, most of those longer stories have been broken up. But with something like EC Stories, first they're all so many of them are so wonderful. And it's, easier to keep them together if you have just a handful of pages rather than a whole full issue. If that makes any sense.
It does. You've spoken before, obviously, about how important it was when you were doing some of the first artist editions and doing the one with the Rocketeer for Dave Stevens. Now, you have a Dave Stevens Covers and Stories Connoisseur Edition coming out as well. I'm curious, what was that like, kind of putting together this?
That's a book that I did before, and this will be a redesign on that.
Okay.
It'll be a larger format, and it'll have some updated scans. And it's been out of print for more than 10 years. And there are some artists that should always be available. And Dave Stevens is one of them. His work was so gorgeous, and most people know his Rocketeer stuff, but there was a lot of his work that he did that is virtually unknown. So this will have a lot of treasures in it that are rarely seen.
I have a very specific, kind of weird process question. When you're developing these new books, is there a specific kind of spine style that there will be that will have a common thematicality if you were to put all of your books together, or are they all going to have unique designs that are more attributable to what the book is itself? I'm curious. It's such a weird question to ask about spines, but I thought I would ask it.
No, it's funny. I was literally talking about spines yesterday with one of my designers about artist editions. It depends on the book. If it's something like an artist edition, then yes, we'll try to keep those fairly uniform, following one particular path. The connoisseur editions, it's a little bit different. They're one, and so each one of those will be on their own.
Mm-hmm. Now, one that you've announced and is definitely in a volume I'm really excited about is the Jim Apparo's DC Classics. So I'm curious about the thought process going into this. I love that you call it DC Classics as opposed to specifically having it linked to Batman, etc., but obviously there's going to be Batman stories in there. I'm curious, one, what was it like to kind of cultivate the stories that are going to be included here, and what made you settle on DC Classics as being the best title?
I wanted a title that would be that would sort of explain what was in the book a little bit better. The forthcoming Neil Adams book is also called DC Classics for much the same reason. And this particular book, I was able to track down a lot of great material. Initially, it was going to have 8 complete stories, 4 Brave and the Bold, and 4 Spectre. It was very important for me as a fan to have the Spectre stuff. The Spectre material when I was a kid was some of my favorite stuff. It ran only 10 issues in Adventure Comics, but it really was such a great, short, wonderful run. And it was also tough because I had a lot of other material that didn't make it into the book. I mean, I have 3 other Brave and the Bold stories. I have 2 Phantom Stranger stories. So I've got a good start if I ever do a second Jim Aparo book. But I kept on finding more and more great stuff. So, for instance, with the 4 Brave and the Bold, I came across a complete detective story from one of my favorite storylines when I was a kid. It was called The Bat Murderer, where Batman is accused of murdering Talia. And so I was able to get that, and then I was able to find another Brave and the Bold, another Spectre story. So I added those to the book. So now I have 10 full complete stories and 1 actual short story that's only 3 pages, an Aqualad story from Teen Titans. So honestly, there are 11 complete stories now. There are more than 30 covers. There are a bunch of splash pages. And I wound up, initially the book was going to be 192 pages, and it was impossible for me to do that. So I've expanded it to 208 pages now. And, it got to the point where, it was really tough at the end having to make some cuts with things that I did want in it. So it's one of those books where there's not really any dead spots. There's not really anything I don't think is really worthy of being.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious now that obviously, like, you're the company, you're the guy. I mean, how much thought do you put into, the page counts and modifying them? Like, as you said on this one, like modifying it from 192 to 216, like how much mental calculus do you have to play now that you are more cognizant? I mean, not that you weren't before, but now that you are more cognizant of the overall costs in terms of production and what that means for, retailing, like how much thought did you put into this?
Well, it is something that you have to weigh. I'm going to make, several $1,000s less on this book because of the additional pages. But, at the end of the day, I have to think about what's best for the book. There's just, it's always been kind of a balance of working with the creative on one side and the suits on the other. And, I've always been very creator friendly. And now I find myself in a spot of being, on both sides of the fence. And I'm going to lose some money on it, but it's going to make a much better book. And at the end of the day, I really do this because I love the books that I...
Mm-hmm. Random question. You obviously...
and also I'm an idiot. But anyway, go ahead.
A random question, but obviously, you've created all these art editions over the years. How often, or if ever, do you go to your own library and just kind of pull off one of these books that you worked on and flip through it and sit down and kind of re-immerse yourself in the original art? How often, and what's your favorite volume to pick off the shelf?
Not nearly enough. They're big. I look at a lot of stuff, from time to time. I have a stack of books, near me, and I have bookshelves all over the house. But, I look at them when they come back from the printer, but I don't really revisit them too often in that form. And as for which ones I'm most proud of, is that what you said?
Yeah.
I guess my favorites. I'm a big EC fan, so I love pretty much all the ECs, especially the Wally Wood, the Best of EC, Volume 1 and 2, the Jack Davis book, the two Will Eisner Spirit books I did are real favorites of mine. The Walter Simonson stuff, the first Thor, and especially the Manhunter one, because that was, Manhunter is probably my favorite series ever. The Dave Stevens, it was the first one. There were too many to pick. I think I've done close to 90 on these things.
Wow. I knew it was a big number, but I'm not sure I realized it was quite that big.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Well, I'm going to let you get back to your evening / afternoon in just a moment, but is there anything else you'd like to tease up or talk about that's coming from Act 4 in the future?
Not a lot, but I will have some announcements for some new books at WonderCon, which is in just over 3 weeks. A couple of really exciting things, and if the paperwork gets done, even more exciting things. But I do have a lot of projects coming up that I think will excite people. And my wife likes to say that I'm excited about what I'm doing again, and I think I really am. And honestly, if she's happy, I'm happy. It's great, a great collaborator on all this.
That's excellent. Well, again, Scott, thank you so much for joining me again today, and for providing your insights and putting out such beautiful volumes. And I look forward to seeing the new output. So thank you so much.
Adam, thank you very much for having me.